Hello, lovely podcast people. I'm back. Welcome to the next. Really, I don't know if there's a way you can do this on the different podcast platforms. I have seen it, but like season 2 of Not Another Nutrition Podcast. So yes, I've been away, had a bit of, let's call it a sabbatical. This is episode 99. I'm going to do a little episode 100. I feel like I owe it to you, at least in part, a teeny tiny bit. Some of you have sent me lovely messages about the fact that I've been away and absent. I won't give you a full explanation because that would take a long time and would probably lead to legal ramifications. And just stress that none of us need. But I'm going to do it just in part because I can also give you an idea for what to expect ahead. But this is going to be as short and sweet as possible about a very current issue that I'm just seeing everywhere on all the social media platforms. So I just wanted to discuss it in a very balanced and evidence-based way. And that is the claim that's going around that 16% protein is the optimal sweet spot of intake of protein, which is just wrong. It's outdated, quite alarmingly so. We're going back decades to before we had good data that was relative to the individual, not relative to the individual's energy intake, which will change based on lots of different factors, whether that's subconscious or conscious, whether that's goal specific, whether they're increasing or decreasing their calories to reach a certain goal. But this has come about it's being sold a relatively world-leading geneticist who I'm well aware of because in my old podcast, I interviewed him. Me and the other co-host, Mike Sweeney, who I've spoken about before, dietitian, interviewed him around the topic of genetics, which he's an expert on, and he was very evidence-based, and it was fantastic. Unfortunately, the world moves on. People potentially start going outside of their lane a little bit, and we get to the situation that we're in. So the question that's been posed and the way this is coming out on the internet is the optimal diet for fat loss. And the statement is that there's this sweet spot around 16% of protein. And it's difficult to understand where this number's come from. There's no references, there was no evidence provided, there was no discussion around this figure of what it means, or what studies have been done and what they found that would lead us to this like very, very specific 16%. Like I know I teach a lot of maths within the area of nutrition. I love maths. And people are you say percentage and suddenly they're like, yep, I'm out. This, is not for me. I can do maybe subtraction, addition, bit of multiplication, division, but percentages, no. You can leave that. Algebra, Rain Man, mathematics for other people, not me. And so we're talking really on a population level, like 16% protein, like just round it to 15% to at least give people a chance, working in the tens and fives. Arlo, my 6-year-old, he's nailed his tens and fives. And, I think that's mostly where people stop learning. You get to your 16 times table or your 8 times table or your 4 times table, which would all be helpful for this 16%, and people are just out. Anyway, I'm going off. The point is it's just not actionable. 16% of what? Then we need to then explain to people, well, what we mean by that 16% is it's 16% of your calories. It's not 16% of your plate. You're not dividing your plate up into 6.6 compartments, 6 recurring compartments. I think that's 100 divided by 16. You're not or dividing it into 4, and then it's sort of a little bit more than half of that quarter. You're not doing that. You're going how many calories on your plate, which no one knows anyway, and then you're going 16% of those calories are going to come from protein, and then the scenario it creates is really it's just not actionable advice. That's where I would start with this bit of information, because it was delivered like this is a sustainable and healthy way to eat. And there was the question was asked around weight loss. The answer given was around 16% protein would be a sustainable and healthy thing for anyone to apply to any diet. Now, presumably, this is the problem with communication. We need to be clear what we're talking about, even if it's complicated information. People may get lost if it's complicated, but when they can understand it, we need to at least answer the question that's being asked. So bear in mind the two things I'm going to talk to you today about: health and fat loss. There's another discussion around protein for muscle gain that we won't necessarily have. I might make a statement, but I'm going to talk about what was discussed and why it's patently wrong and just poor information. Now, does the general population even track their calories to know that? Most people don't. So again, it's not very helpful. Even if they could do whether or not they can do percentages, they would first need to even just be counting their calories and then being able to work out where they go from there. If 16% of my energy intake ends up being 400 calories, to make it really easy, I then need to know that there's 4 calories in a gram of protein. So I divide my 400 by 4 and I get, I eat 100 grams of protein a day. Then I need to work out how many grams of protein are in the different foods I eat to make 100 grams. It all gets difficult. Now, when we're talking about these figures, this is what a coach, an MNU certified nutritionist, will help you do this. You don't need to know, if you're going to work with a nutritionist or a coach or whoever. But so we have to have these discussions of where this figure would lie. Then we can put it into terms that clients will understand. But I'm just talking about this statement of 16%. The problem with 16% is it's a percent of what they eat. And as I told you, this changes based on all different factors of an individual. So we get an individual, if we do the maths, you get a man or woman who weighs approximately 70 kilograms. And then we want to work out what their metabolic rate is. Because if we're going to talk about someone eating, for the long term, a sort of a maintenance calories, I've talked about maintenance before. You can go and look at the podcast where I talk loads about that. We then work out their basal metabolic rate. And a really easy way for doing that, just off the top of your head, it leaves room for inaccuracies, but if you just want to do it, I say off the top of your head, you'd have to be very good at maths. But you might, if you're a man, you times that 70 by about by 22. And if you're a woman, 22. If you're a man, 24. Gives you an approximation. And then we need to work out how active we are. Now, this is where the nuance. This is why we teach MNU certified nutritionists to do this for all different clients and different case study scenarios of how to pick these numbers and start them off and what to do from there. But you might go, I'm a relatively sedentary individual. Some activity, but not loads. So you might times that by what a daily activity factor or a physical activity level. It's this factor of your basal metabolic rate. So it's a multiple of that, of about 1.2. Would be someone who just has you're not sat down 100% of the time, but you're not someone who's doing, 20,000 steps a day and super active and working on your feet and whatever. I would be about a 1.2. I'm probably more like a 1.15. But anyway, we won't go into my shortcomings. And then we get this situation of, okay, that individual, if we've got their maintenance calories, let's say this is on a non-exercising day, we're not talking about any particular exercise on this day, 16% of that individual's intake, if we do 70 times 24 times 1.2, 16% of their energy intake will lead us to a figure of around 80 grams of protein a day for that individual. Now, the problem is if you end up at this figure of 80 grams, that's based on that day. What if they're more active and they eat more calories? What if they're more inactive? Now, the question posed was for a diet. So let's talk about this rough figure that everyone throws out there, 500 calorie deficit, that would approximately lead to somewhere in the region of a pound of fat loss a week. Very, very roughly. Now, the problem is now that person's calories have gone down, removing those calories reduces our total, what 100% of our calories is, and therefore our 16% gets smaller by around 20 grams of protein. So your 80 grams has gone down to 60 grams of protein. Now, if you remember, my individual was 70 kilograms. I'm now eating less. I'm basically eating the absolute bare minimum for 60. In fact, if you do 0.8 times 70, you're getting 56 grams of protein. So you're almost at the absolute bare minimum of protein intake for someone just to be non-protein deficient. And we're here talking about optimal, the sweet spot, healthy aging. Now, we have the research on this. There is good data. There's a paper, and actually, as I usually do, martin-mcdonald.com/EP, and then this will be episode 99, so you do EP 99. Type that in, click that, whatever. In the show notes, if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or wherever, go to the show notes, we'll hyperlink that, you click it, and you can get all of these references. There's a paper by Phillips, I don't know the year off it off the top of my head, but it just talks about optimal, if there is such a word, protein intakes for kind of healthy aging through the life cycle. So at the different stages of our life, as we get older, not wanting to gain lots of body fat over our lifestyle, but also wanting to maintain, and therefore wanting to maintain energy balance, wanting to not lose muscle mass as we age, protecting our bone mass, which is again related to our protein intake, maintaining a healthy immune system, blah, 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 blah. The minimum range given for optimal health there is 1.2 times body weight. So if we do type into your calculator 70 times 1.2, you're getting 84 grams of protein as the absolute minimum intake. And this goes up to like 1.6 grams per kilogram. Somewhere between 1.2 and 1.6 is this, for want of a better word, optimal for our life cycle. So up to like a 110, 112 grams. And roughly, like if you go above that, not an issue. We'll discuss the higher intakes issue in a bit. But you can see how 60 grams is a lot lower than what's being discussed here, a diet at 16% protein. It makes no sense. There's no evidence showing that that's an optimal intake. It's just, I don't know why this has been discussed. So another point to make here is fat loss. In this question, we're discussing fat loss. It's arguably better to have a higher intake of protein during a fat loss period. Now, for all reasons I've probably discussed elsewhere with regards to appetite management, because protein is more satiating, the tiny boost in metabolic rate that extra protein gives you, the way that protein is processed in the body in a sort of slightly, the calories are slightly wasted, the thermic effect, the production of heat is high when you eat protein. That's where you get your meat sweats from. But also for the retention of lean body mass as you diet, which is likely a good thing. If we're talking aesthetics, it's a great thing, probably. I guess that's actually very subjective. Sorry for that faux pas in this PC social justice world. Allow me it, okay? But yes, some people do want to lose muscle mass, and that's absolutely fine. But from a health perspective, again, losing lots of lean body mass is probably not a good idea with regards to, all of the different great things that lean body mass does for us, this lean tissue in terms of helping us manage blood glucose and the situation we've got in the world with diabetes and pre-diabetes and metabolic syndrome, which all relates to then our cardiovascular disease risk, all these things. Health, right? So not just having a good triceps, big booty, nice quads, blah, 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 whatever. So not just the aesthetic side of things. If you find muscle aesthetically pleasing. It's a sad time when I have to say that, right? But, I am all for kind of inclusion and bearing in mind that not, this is a big thing we teach on MNU. Don't assume your client's goals. We have some funny client case studies, situations where you watch a consultation and basically the practitioner just essentially assumes, of course you want a bikini body, and blah, blah, like it's horrendous to watch, it's painful. But it's the industry that we're in somewhat. But anyway, the intakes that we are recommending. In fact, my friend James Krieger, he did a meta-analysis with others like almost 20 years ago. And there have been, several since showing, much more favourable effects. The European, Society for Obesity even recommends much higher intakes for, people with higher body weight and higher body fat. And it's also worth bearing that in mind. Like my individual is 70 kilos. But in these studies, if you look at the normative data for the subjects, you might, 100 kilograms. Well, 100 times 1.5 is 150 grams of protein, which is an insanely far cry from this 60 grams of protein that's been recommended in this interview. It makes no sense. It's difficult to have heard it just with so little discussion or evidence behind where this number have been plucked out from, when we're so far from using silly percentages, which are, if I eat a little bit more carbs and a little more fat, that just pushes my protein down. But my actual absolute protein intake stayed consistent, which our need for protein is likely fairly consistent. We're not burning it for energy particularly. We're using it for things like, synthesizing things in our body, wound repair, building immune cells, repairing muscles, like all of these different things. So growing our hair, repairing the turnover of our skin. Like we're kind of made up of a whole lot of protein. Do you even DNA? Anyway, it's this situation of, even these figures I've mentioned might even be good, the lower end for someone who wanted muscle mass. In this interview, there was a discussion of, and I'll move on to my next point now, if you're not lifting weights, eating more than 16% of protein will be harming your kidneys. Oh, goodness. I know thousands of people who saw that just went, ew, just that. Oh, really? Really? You've said that. You've said that in 2023. You might as well have just assumed someone's gender, you bad human. It's laughable that that's being discussed, because lifting weights doesn't suddenly mean you burn more protein. And the amount of protein, if you do the maths of gaining a significant amount of muscle that someone could reliably hope to achieve within a year naturally, the amount of extra protein you actually need to make that muscle is like a couple of grams a day. So the amount of use of protein is really, really small for gaining muscle. The amount that we might need to trigger certain responses, like I said, appetite management, muscle protein synthesis, is higher. So actually the reason we need to eat more protein is more so for signaling to the body to build new protein. It's not really as a raw material, a brick to build, the house, the muscle. This discussion around kidney, there's a really good, if that's something that triggered you, or you see this discussion on the internet, you see people spreading misinformation, DeVries, DeVries, oh, I hope I've spelled that right, Michaela DeVries, again, Stuart Phillips, who, I love the guy. He was like one of the forefathers of sports nutrition when I was a young training performance nutritionist, and ended up sort of becoming friends with him, and we had some great chats, and I've talked about these elsewhere. Done some great things with the World Health Organization and protein recommendations, and is still there in the trenches doing stuff. But yes, I don't know if he's still at McMaster, but certainly this was, I don't think that. But anyway, Michaela de Vries is the first author on that paper. Stu Phillips is obviously consulted out of a university in Canada. I can't remember which one. Anyway, the point being, go and read that one. If you want to sort of get clued up and just go, be quiet, that's utterly ridiculous. Higher protein intakes are not causing these issues with kidneys. There's numerous, there's the Antonio study, can't remember the year, but 4.4 grams per kilogram body weight and no adverse effects on glomerular filtration rate, which is one of these markers that is used. Sorry. If your kidneys aren't working in the right way and that filtration rate falls, we can use that as a marker of, there's an issue here. There's maybe some kidney damage occurring. And actually, I believe, basically the De Vries paper shows, high protein, low protein, just forget it. It's ridiculous. But they actually show in their analysis, there's like this small trend towards actually better, higher GFR in the higher protein group. So it's just silly. I cannot believe that statement is being made. And that brings me on to my final point. And actually, I've got two more. You probably guessed that. My final point is, when people talk outside of their area of expertise, like I commented on this Instagram post about this, and people commenting, these goons on Instagram, do you have a background in science to be able to critique this? And then some other gimp like, I looked him up on his website, can't really see what his qualifications are, bit vague, red flag. I'm like, I almost swore there. Sometimes in my head I talk with an American accent, and I'm like, bitch, please. And like, when I see these comments, that's what I say in my head. I obviously don't say that, but it's just like funny. I feel like I'm in a movie sometimes. I mean, that's what the world feels like at the minute, right? You live in a movie. I'm like, bitch, please. But like, Google me. There's like 1 billion places you can find my qualifications. Like I literally have published, research in the area that this geneticist is a part of. But yeah, I have actual qualifications and an entire career in nutrition, which he does not. But yet he's talking about these things. Anyway, don't make me rant. What was I talking about? Basically, these people talking outside of their lanes, they become no better than the layperson. As soon as you jump into someone else's area of expertise, you just become, that statement is no better than a common low-level, level 3, no offense, personal trainer who's just like brand new 18-year-old out of the industry, done a 2.5-minute course in personal training or nutrition or whatever, and making statements, protein damages kidneys, so it goes too high. But even then, they probably wouldn't say that. They go, eat as much protein as you can. And it happens. It sadly happens that these people, like these gut health, quote unquote experts, suddenly talking about fat loss and blood glucose management, and they just become no better than the guy down the pub going, did you hear that if you eat too much protein, it damages your kidneys, because of some obscure link. Now, if you have chronic kidney disease, there's more of a discussion there, but in normal healthy individuals, even individuals who might already have some negative impacts on their kidneys, like a type 2 diabetic, even they can eat elevated protein. There's all the research to support this. So that's just an area. Huberman, who I'm reliably told is like a good guy and wants to do good stuff, but when he starts touching on nutrition, he just becomes a basic, I was going to swear again, but he just becomes village in his knowledge. And last but not least, my goodness, how you look bears no meaning on your knowledge on a topic. All these, like, this is the worst thing. I'm commenting there, critiquing the point, and then other people, fitness industry looking people, one of them actually I commented and was like, you're a joke. You're a disgrace to the health and fitness industry, which is supposed to help people. And he deleted his comment. Essentially saying, look at him. He obviously doesn't practice what he's preached about this guy. And it's just like these ad hominem attacks, these attacks on people's appearance, as though it bears any weight on their knowledge on a topic. It's ridiculous. It made me want to repost all of my posts about those things. But again, if you're listening to this and you're like that, just have a word with yourself. Like, I get it. Like, if you're an 18-year-old, like, I'd love to influence the next generation of health and fitness professionals. I would love Mac Nutrition Uni to become the thing that people do from, leave school at 18 and do that instead of doing, pointless courses. Courses that can teach you how to make sausages and how bread is baked and stuff, rather than how to help people because you want to be a nutritionist and, being, whatever. Going to university is just unless you go into a good university with a good program, which there are very, very, very few of, hashtag change my mind, hashtag prove me wrong. I think the thing is as well, I do these posts about, knowledge not being, if you're an 18-year-old, like if you're there thinking, no, it does correlate a bit. If you know a bit of stuff, then, that will then lead to something that, you can't say it has nothing to do with. You're wrong. And I'll say this in the most triggering way possible. If you ever disagree with me, your best course of action is to go away and think, why am I wrong? I love saying that because it triggers people so bad, because it's such an arrogant thing to say. And I only mean it like 99.9%. There's 0.1% where it might not be the case. If you're watching me, by the way, on a watching platform, YouTube, Spotify videos, I've got a new camera. Does it look any different? Am I more clear? I got this jumper from the babies. It's a cardigan, new cardigan. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope I haven't gone on too long. I hope it's something that you can share with people if you see this misinformation being spread further, because it was, very, very popular. And I hope that you are happy I'm back. I will release podcast episode number 100, which will be, short, just a little, hey, I'm back. This is what to expect. Sorry I was gone. Some stuff was going down. I look forward to being in your ears. Missed a trick there. I look forward to being inside your ears more in 2023. Much love. If you didn't really leave a review in the last few years, you need to go and do one now.